Hello, everybody. This is Stephanie Belseth. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner at Newbridge Health and Wellness in Edina, and I really wish that we were all together right now in person. Since we can't be, this is the best alternative, and I'm super happy that Ed and Terry were able to convert this over and get it going. We all are going to use this amazing platform, which I'm really impressed with, to group chat and to mingle with each other and to learn all kinds of amazing things. And actually, this platform gets us farther out into the universe, so all across the world. So it's awesome. Want to just let everyone know that we're all excited to be in person next year at Autism One. So this year we've got the remote thing, but next year we'll be able to be back in person. And be kind to yourself. These are challenging times, and there's a lot going on, and a lot of stress for everyone. And just want to let you know that as an Autism One community, we're here for you, and come find us. There's going to be time for questions after the presentation. So jot down your questions, and we're here to help answer them for you. So thanks so much. Appreciate your time and being here. My name's Stephanie Belseth, and I'm so excited to be here with you this weekend. These are crazy, crazy times. I wish we could all be there together. This is always one of my favorite conferences, and I love mingling with all of you and seeing my friends and colleagues. And unfortunately, we're doing it remotely this year, but we're going to do it. I'm really thankful to Ed and Terry for pulling this off, and we all are going to make it through and keep working on the journey of healing our kids. So thanks for hanging in there and being here. I'm going to be talking today about how to heal kids' brains. So we have an epidemic of neurologic inflammation causing mental illness, autism, pandas, you name it, and there's a way to heal it. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. And I'm so happy to meet you all. I am at Newbridge Clinic in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we see kids from preconception up until really old age. We see people for Bredesen protocol and reversing Alzheimer's all the way down to preconception to help people learn to prevent what we're dealing with in our modern day epidemics. So I specialize in neurodevelopmental disorders, and I'm really pleased to be here today with you. All right, so today we're going to talk about brains on fire and how to help them heal. So one of the issues that I think we oftentimes have is that many people lose the small joys in the hope for the big happiness. And I really encourage all of you to take the time to really appreciate and celebrate those small joys with your kids, because those big goals of recovering your child or all of the different outcomes you want are really important, but it's also super important to make sure that we're recognizing those small joys, because that's really what life's all about. We're going to talk a lot about neuroinflammation today, the path to healing an inflamed brain, healing modalities, case studies, group-based care, some resources, and I'm really excited to go into depth on some of this with you. We're really in the midst of a pediatric mental health epidemic. We have more autism, depression, ADHD, autism, pandas, you name it, we have it, and it's growing. One of the saddest statistics that I saw this year was that pediatric suicide rates have tripled in 10 to 14-year-olds, so young kids, from 2007 to 2017. And this is all a result of neuroinflammation, in my opinion. Well, there are certainly contributing factors, but it's a big factor in the epidemic. The good news is that functional biomedical integrative multidisciplinary approaches really can help heal these disorders. So we're going to go into how to do that today. So the percentage of kids with chronic conditions from 1960 was at 5%, 2015, 50%, and 2025 up to 80%. And in my office, I certainly see at least 8 out of every 10 kids diagnosed with a chronic disease. And 200 years ago, it was probably 1 or 2%. So we have a lot of work to do to look at the underlying root causes and to make sure that we're addressing those so that our kids can fully heal. So the new normal is that almost every kid has some kind of a chronic diagnosis of some kind. Everything from anxiety to ADHD to asthma to autism, PANDAS and PANDAS, schizophrenia, mast cell activation disorder, Ehlers-Danlos, POTS, anorexia, you name it, our kids have it. And we have to change that. So the good news is that neuroinflammation is being recognized more as triggering psychiatric illness. There's more publications on it. We know that it's really a thing. And one of the tools that helps me diagnose this is the NeuroQuant MRI. And this is a software overlaid over a regular MRI, so insurance typically covers it. Centers for Diagnostic Imaging does it in our area and have been great partners in this, and basically helps us see that inflammation in 3D form and also or at least 2D form, and also looking at these areas of blue here are showing inflammation. And the area of red here is actually indicative of a shrinkage or atrophy. And so this is where the child scores compared to 100 other children of their same gender and age, and anything that's at the upper 25th percentile or the lowest 25th percentile, so 2 standard deviations above the mean, is flagged. And this really helps me figure out a lot about how to treat the child, how to monitor their progress, and what types of treatments we might do. So the path to healing is really complex. I've put together a 14-step path, and you have to pay attention to all the steps. Most people do. There are some patients that can skip a step because they're already ahead of the game on certain things, but the first 2 that are most important is the healthy lifestyle and a healthy living environment. So you want clean air, clean food, clean water, movement, quiet, sleep, sunshine, joy, love. Really crucial, and that alone can be helpful if you can institute that in your family. The next step that's really crucial is a healthy living environment. So chemical-free, mold-free, EMF-free. You need to have natural daylight. It needs to be calm and structured. Our kids don't do well when there's chaos. They need that calm. And basically, we have to jump frog over these sometimes when a patient comes in and they're in crisis. So if you're in crisis, you can go ahead and jump to step 3, but you want to make sure you revisit and go back to steps 1 and 2 for that healthy lifestyle and healthy living environment. For calming, I really find that microcurrent neurofeedback helps tremendously. We've had kids with 9 out of 10 anxiety come down to a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 after just 1 session. So we use that a lot of times when kids are really inflamed and they need a quick reset to help with symptoms. CBD, frequency-specific microcurrent. There are supplements that are good for calming that we'll go into later, homeopathy, craniosacral therapy, Muscatova, neurologic reflex integration. Sometimes we have to use procaine. Neurotherapy can be helpful. Ketamine lozenges if we need them. Sometimes meds are needed, but you got to get that calming down so that you can focus and have the energy to focus on the rest of the plan. The next step to healing is really looking at reducing inflammation. So CBD, curcumin, fish oil, lots of things in that family that help with reducing inflammation. And CBD is by far my favorite. We want to repair and strengthen the immune response. We use gut healing for that, detox, FDI, LDN, IVIG, so many different things that can help. the next step on the journey is really to make sure that we're accurately diagnosing and identifying the infection. So what's really going on underneath this child's symptoms or diagnosis. And lab testing can be very helpful for that. Applied kinesiology, ART, these are all different ways to be able to figure out and quickly get to the chase of what's actually triggering this child's neuroinflammation. So the next step on the path is really to make sure that we're adequately treating infections. And a lot of kids, for example, with pandas, people just focus on strep, but there's a lot of times underlying Lyme, mycoplasma, viral issues, other issues that are really triggering. So we have to use all of the modalities that we have to treat that. So we use antibiotics, low-dose immunotherapy, homeopathy, antibiotic herbs, energetic modalities, whatever it takes to get those infections treated with the least amount of harm to the microbiome. And then once you get kind of past that step, you really have to move into the blood-brain barrier. We'll be talking more about that in the slides to come. Detox, really critical. A lot of people have done all the other steps and they don't do the detox step, and therefore their immune system can't fully heal, and then they never fully get better. Retraining the brain with neurotherapy has been instrumental in our practice to get people better much faster and feeling much better and much happier, better OCD, etc. And then once you're doing well, you have to figure out how to prevent the regressions. Because one of the most heartbreaking things is when people think they've gotten over the hump, it's been many months, they're doing great, their child's great, but then all of a sudden, you know, they are back after an exposure to an infection, and they're worse than they started when they started. So there are ways to prevent regressions by using prophylactic antimicrobials. Immunotherapy is amazing at this. It's my absolute favorite, low-dose immunotherapy. And then effectively treating underlying issues, making sure you've gotten them all. So, and the next steps are a little bit more elusive, but they're very important for a subset of people. And the next one is reversing the cell danger response. We'll talk more in depth about that in a little bit, but Suramin is one way to do that. Unfortunately, that's not available to us right now. There's a CDR, LDI that can be helpful, but lots of different ways to do that. And it's complex, so it takes some time and effort. Calming the limbic system is a piece that I found to be extremely helpful in the last many years, and have patients that really do well with the DNRS, with Gupta, brain tap, meditation, others for calming the nervous system, and it's really critical to healing. And then the last step is really, you know, if there's kind of remaining damage that's not able to be healed, you may need to consider moving on to stem cells. Sometimes pulsed electromagnetic field therapy can be helpful, and others, but many times we don't need to go that far. So the healthy living environment, I think, is critical, and I'm only going to focus on the things that I think a lot of people miss, because a lot of these things you know about and you've heard about in other lectures you've attended at this conference. But mold and mycotoxins, mast cell activation, which is under the allergy category, and electromagnetic fields are things that a lot of people really miss. And you know, most kids will not get better until they deal with those things if they're present. Certainly common everyday stress is important because stress is really more toxic, or at least as toxic as mercury and some of the other heavy metals. Lots of research on the negative impacts to our physical and mental health with stress. So we have to really help kids get in that parasympathetic nervous system mode, or they really will have a hard time healing. Heavy metals are something that a lot of times people forget, and glyphosate, chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, you gotta just clear it out of your diet. There's really no way around it. And I don't find that people fully heal unless they can do that. So the number two that I think that people miss are mold and EMFs. So basically, get all the testing you need to do for mold. You can do urinary mycotoxins for yourself or your child. You can do dust sampling, mold plates from immunolytics, the ERMI testing, and nothing beats a really good home inspection by a very knowledgeable, health-informed inspector, building biologist. And then EMFs, I really believe in this day and age, people just need to get rid of their Wi-Fi. I used to say that people could just turn it off at night, but I've seen such dramatic improvement when people just get rid of it and go to hardwired solutions in their home, when they create a sleep sanctuary for their child that's totally free of all electrical fields, and an air filter in there to just help with the air quality. Then their bodies are unburdened and they can start healing. So these are issues, if you haven't dealt with them, there are conferences, conference lectures this weekend about these. Watch them in depth. These are each their own topic, could be all day topics. So important to focus on. So when your kid's in a crisis, you got to really jump into that self-regulation and calming mode, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to highlight not all of the steps of the path to healing, but some critical ones in the interest of time. So you can listen to some of my other presentations where I go into more depth on the whole path. But frequency-specific microcurrent we have found in our practice to be very helpful. It reduces inflammation, injury, and when cells in the body are injured or distressed, the vibrational frequency of the electrons is disrupted in that tissue. And frequency-specific microcurrent uses 2 channels of microcurrent therapy aimed at reducing inflammation or increasing vitality in the specific organs or tissues that we are trying to focus on. And at Newbridge, we've developed autism and panda-specific protocols that have really helped kids get out of flares when they're having an exposure to infection and really not doing well, can help them calm down, really help increase the parasympathetic tone, and get out of that fight or flight mode. Great protocols and frequencies for increasing vagal tone, and helps with sleep, bowels, gut, everything. It's a great option. So the next set of things that really help with calming and self-regulation, and if you're in that place with your kid, you're at wit's end, you don't know if you can even keep them in the house anymore because they're just so disruptive, and think about some of these type of modalities. So microcurrent neurofeedback, amazing. It has been by far my favorite thing that we brought onto the practice in the last few years. Basically, it's really much quicker than traditional neurofeedback. It helps with anxiety, depression, autistic symptoms, OCD. OCD is pretty tough to treat, at least to get quick turnarounds. And we've seen just tremendous improvements in OCD. And, a few patients recently that we've tried it on for that. And we're really excited about that. So homeopathy, craniosacral, ketamine, we've mentioned some of these before. Sometimes we got to move to psych meds, and short term, we have to do that sometimes. I don't like to do that because I find that these interfere. They're hard on the kidneys and liver. They interfere with the healing process sometimes, but sometimes short term they're needed so that you can focus and heal, do the hard work of healing, because if you're in crisis every day, you're not going to have the energy to do that. There are many supplements that are helpful for calming. So CBD, I love CBD. Great for bringing down brain inflammation, gut inflammation, so many things. You'll have the opportunity to listen to other talks on this. And it's a critical piece for a lot of kids that are really inflamed. GABA, L-theanine, phosphatidylserine, inositol, lithium, many, many more. Tapping and other yoga and things like that. Neurostim and neurofeedback, very different. As I said, that microcurrent neurofeedback is really more of a neurostim. I love it. Other forms, we combined all 3, traditional neurofeedback, neurostim, and this new microcurrent neurofeedback, which is kind of a beast of its own, but it's aimed at interrupting the negative patterns in the brain very quickly, which then helps everything, coherence improve, and we're seeing some great benefits. So reducing inflammation is the next step on the healing journey, and longer term approaches are going to be CBD oil, high-dose fish oil, certain antioxidants in camel's milk, FSM for pans and pandas, Lyme mold, etc. Those are all great longer term approaches, although some of them can work quickly. CBD and FSM can sometimes bring people down right away. But sometimes if you don't have access to all of those, you need to move to maybe a short course of ibuprofen or Aleve or something like that. That can really help some kids bring their inflammation down quickly. And if you see that, you know that inflammation is an issue here. If those things help, then you are on the right track, and you're really looking at more of an autoimmune based neuroinflammation that is treatable. So steroids are another example too, that sometimes when things are really severe, we use, and it can be diagnostic and confirm the inflammatory nature of the illness if your child goes on steroids and they get better relatively quickly. So the next step is really repairing and strengthening the immune response. And this is a really dense slide. So I'm going to just summarize it. But gut healing is always critical for repairing and strengthening the immune response because 70% of the immune system resides in the gut and produced and regulated by the good gut bacteria and the other microbes in the gut. So you can't get better from any of these complex chronic illnesses, PANDAS, autism, chronic Lyme, ADHD, mental health issues, any of these conditions, you have to focus on the gut. So an organic diet is really crucial. I love adding camel's milk to every diet, starting in very small doses. It's really more of a medicine than a food, but it's a great thing to be able to add in to boost the immune system. You have to kill the bad microbes while protecting the good microbes. So many times people just wipe out everything good and bad, and that's really hard to rebuild. So you want to really protect and start from the get-go and choosing wisely when you're using your killing agents. GI immune support like FSM targeted at maybe autologous stool or Clostridia or yeast or parasites or, strep, different things like that that can be an issue in the gut. And then healing the gut lining, many supplements that are helpful for that. I do recommend avoiding glutamine if you have neuroinflammation because that can convert into glutamate in some patients depending on their genetic pathways. And I've seen many kids get much worse on glutamine even though we think of it traditionally as helping with leaky gut. The next stage in repairing the immune response is just the detox. If you are full of heavy metals or chemicals or glyphosate or pesticides or mold toxins, you're not going to be able to heal until you get that cleared out. So your immune system will be suppressed and not be able to handle things. So always important to focus on detox. You have to balance your zinc and copper ratios. You have to get binders to clear out the metals and the molds and the toxins. Fulvic and humic acid is a earth-based mineral, which is great as a binder, but also providing trace minerals. I love phosphatidylcholine therapy, both oral and IV, can give amazing benefits, really helps to detox. Frequency-specific microcurrent, ionic foot bath, sauna. Sauna is amazing. Mayo Clinic published some research earlier in the last year or so showing the more minutes of sauna that people partake in each week, the longer they live, the healthier they are, the lower their disease. And certainly in the autism PANDAS mental health community, the more you can detox, the more your genetics are going to work, the better you're going to feel. That heat is good for killing infections that don't like high temperatures. So sauna is an awesome thing to do. There's detox frequencies on FSM. We have our sulfur-based chelators, which are glutathione, NAC, ALA, DMSA, EDTA, etc. There's a place for everything for different patients, and not everyone has the same protocol. We personalize the protocols. It's very important that you're looking at the individual, not a protocol. So low-dose immunotherapy, amazing. I'm going to be talking more about that later, but it's easy to administer. It's relatively inexpensive. We have health coaches that can help people with this process so that it's much more affordable than other options where you have to see the practitioner every single time you need to get things adjusted. So that's a great option for long-term immunity and getting the immune system to balance and that Th1 and Th2 arm of the immune system to balance. Low-dose naltrexone is great as well. I oftentimes use them in concert with LDI and LDN together. It's given at bedtime and also helps to balance Th1 and Th2. Easy to give, it can be a cream or an oral form. And then the last thing in this toolbox is IVIG. So really helpful to treat the underlying infections first, though. Works best if you're on an anti-inflammatory diet. Better if you've done some detox and gut healing. And you really, in terms of the practical aspect of IVIG, high dose IVIG works much better over 2 days. High dose in general, in my experience, works much better than the lower, more immunodeficiency dosing that's used. And giving some extra fluids before and after, or the process is helpful. Trying to do a little bit of Solu-Medrol in some patients on onset, many patients in the beginning until you know that they're tolerating it well, and then sometimes some things for nausea. Headache and nausea are the most common symptoms with that. So yeast gets its own slide here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it just in the interest of time, but if you haven't checked for yeast or treated it if you have it, you can have autoimmune responses, hypersensitivity responses, and it's really important to do this from a comprehensive approach. Diet, reducing carbs, treating the actual yeast or fungal issue, immunotherapy if there's the autoimmune kind of tendencies or allergy pieces, and prescription and herbal antifungals can be really helpful. Key with that, though, is you have to do them for a long period of time. So I oftentimes do a 6-month antifungal parade. Learned that from some of my early mentors, Liz Mumper and Nancy O'Hara and others. And basically, some parents will report that they've never had a better child than after they've done 6 months of an antifungal parade, and it can be natural antifungals or prescription antifungals. But getting on top of that yeast for enough period of time that the immune system can really start to calm down can be really helpful. The next step is really identifying underlying infections. So there's a ton of standard labs. There's a specialty brain antibody and autoimmune labs, instructions and follow-up that people can learn about. And then really importantly, care for the caregiver. You parents have to really do your own self-care or you're not going to be able to be as readily available to help your child heal. So group coaching, infrared sauna, ozone sauna, ionic foot baths, and lots of other things. Some of the extra more designer treatments like ozone and IV and neurotherapy were offered at a discount. And these are all the therapies that we offer. We found that our group patients, our cohorts, really do better. Our outcomes are much better than the one-on-one patients, at least the one-on-one patients that are typical. So most people can't afford to come in all the time if their insurance doesn't, cover things, and they need to basically, get this in the beginning until you know that they're tolerating it well, and then sometimes some things for nausea. Headache and nausea are the most common symptoms with that. So yeast gets its own slide here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it just in the interest of time, but if you haven't checked for yeast or treated it if you have it, you can have autoimmune responses, hypersensitivity responses, and it's really important to do this from a comprehensive approach. Diet, reducing carbs, treating the actual yeast or fungal issue, immunotherapy if there's the autoimmune kind of tendencies or allergy pieces, and prescription and herbal antifungals can be really helpful. Key with that, though, is you have to do them for a long period of time. So I oftentimes do a 6-month antifungal parade. Learned that from some of my early mentors, Liz Mumper and Nancy O'Hara and others. And basically, some parents will report that they've never had a better child than after they've done 6 months of an antifungal parade, and it can be natural antifungals or prescription antifungals. But getting on top of that yeast for enough period of time that the immune system can really start to calm down can be really helpful. The next step is really identifying underlying infections. So there's a ton of standard labs. There's a specialty brain antibody and autoimmune labs that are really important. Functional medicine testing like organic acids, the mycotox urine mold testing, mitochondrial testing, methylation, comprehensive digestive stool analysis, urine toxic elements, glyphosate, chemicals, metals, more. It goes on and on. I think it's also important to not only test the person, but to test the household. These are environmental diseases, and we have to make sure that we're looking at our environmental factors that the kids have been exposed to, and also in their home and school environments. And then we also can use, in addition to lab testing, we can use applied kinesiology, autonomic response testing, which is Klinghart's method of applied kinesiology, because those are additional tools that can really help us further dig down at the underlying root causes and figure out where we need to focus relatively quickly. So treating infections, we really have to change the terrain of the gut and the body so that the infections don't have a happy home. We don't want them to thrive there. So some of the things that can be helpful for that is just cutting out the sugar and the refined carbs, eating more fiber, eating more vegetables, and then trying to do things to get more alkaline. So the alkaline environment is not as happy of a home for these bad microbes that we don't want to live there. So apple cider vinegar, lemon lime, in water, making drinks out of these things with a little stevia or something, betaine HCl before meals, bitters, Swedish bitters before meals. All of these things are great at helping that terrain. And that can be critical. So antimicrobials, we use herbals, prescriptions, liposomal essential oils, which I have done some additional training in, hydrocell silver. Homeopathics can be really helpful. We have an amazing homeopath in our office, Betty Jo. She uses bioresonance and works really with us as a functional medicine team so that we can kind of join our practices and our therapies for the best benefit of the child, and that's been great. IV ozone and rectal ozone are really great. I think for most kids, the rectal ozone works best because you can get 80% or so of your IV benefit doing rectal if you do it correctly, and it takes 3 minutes. So something very easy for people to do. It's no really worse than getting a rectal thermometer, temperature done. So if you can do that, you can administer rectal ozone, and it's a great option for regeneration and killing infections, and can aid in all kinds of metabolic processes. And many, many others. There's a lot of energy techniques that people don't think about, but many energy techniques we have found to be helpful at treating infections, believe it or not. So we combined, the best of Western medicine, the best of functional medicine, and the best of energy medicine in our practice, and get great results by combining all of them. Craniobiotic therapy was discovered by Tony Smith in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area, and I've trained under him and his partner Ben. Both are awesome CBT practitioners, and several of us in our office have been trained in this, and we just find it to be amazing. I do it on, definitely the majority of my patients, and I have some kids that come in with, tics, for example. They get new onset tics after being exposed to stress and sky high anxiety, and sometimes doing the craniobionic treatment for strep, I get a phone call that the next day their tics were gone. It doesn't happen like that all the time. Certainly there's another subset of kids that get, slowly better over time, but I really found it hard to believe that it could be that effective, but I do see it very helpful in a lot of people. There is a subset of kids that it doesn't seem to help with, and I think that's just a clue that we need to work on all the other areas first. So, homeopathy, low-dose immunotherapy, bioresonance with some right frequencies can be helpful. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, acupuncture and chiropractic are both energy modalities and can be really, really helpful. So the blood-brain barrier is critical, and a lot of people don't think about that when they're thinking about healing autism or healing pandas or ADHD, etc. The blood-brain barrier really protects our brain from foreign substances, hormones and neurotransmitters that aren't supposed to be getting up there, and it maintains a environment that's really constant for the brain and filters out all of those toxins. So when that gets disrupted, the antibodies to infections, toxins, food antigens can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause an immune hyperreaction, which really can decline function. And so if we can get that blood-brain barrier tight, and we'll talk about how to do that, then we start to be able to heal. So closing the blood-brain barrier, we got to look at the things that contribute to it. So I'm going to focus on just a few here that are most pertinent to our population, and that's really radiation. So microwave radiation, electromagnetic radiation. Radiation has been proven and published in the literature to open the blood-brain barrier. So we're bathed in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, 4G, 3G, electrical fields, and these are disruptive, some more than others, certainly to the blood-brain barrier, cell phone towers. So we need to be focusing on this if we've got a leaky blood-brain barrier. And any of the diagnoses that we talked about today, I see leaky blood-brain barriers. There's also a gut connection. So we have to be able to get the gut healthy in order to heal the brain. So the gut barrier and the blood-brain barrier both kind of they've got a hot wire through the vagus nerve to each other, and when one becomes leaky, the other will become leaky. So if you get a concussion, you can have new onset leaky gut. If you have gut issues going on, you can have new onset leaky blood-brain barrier. So the two go together and you have to treat them together. So removing gluten and other reactive foods, gluten, dairy, soy are probably the most reactive, but increasingly corn, sometimes, all kinds of foods can be an issue. And so removing those reactive foods so that you can heal the gut barrier and heal the blood-brain barrier. And many people always wonder why for pandas and autism, we are like, the diet's so important. It's the brain we need to fix, right? It's not the gut. That's as people before they get into functional medicine, but actually the gut and the brain are so closely related, and we have to treat them both in order to be able to heal. And then another thing just to think about is concussions. A lot of kids have had brain injuries, and that can be a barrier to healing the blood-brain barrier and the gut. So making sure that you're looking for those and taking those into consideration and doing the appropriate steps to heal. FSM has a great concussion protocol. I absolutely love it for helping with that. Detox is another component that gets missed a lot. So I really think that that's important to focus on that. You have to prepare to detox though. So you have to really work on drainage, making sure that your organs of flushing are all working, making sure that you're pooping every 24 hours. If you're not, you're really gonna be having problems clearing that waste and the detox processes that you're initiating. And it has to be a 24-hour turnaround. If you're eating on Monday and you're not pooping out what you ate on Monday until Friday, that's a problem. You want to poop out what you ate on Monday on Tuesday. So doing a sesame seed test or other tests to look at stool motility, it can be really helpful. You got to clear the liver and the gallbladder, the lymph. You got to get those things moving. Liver, lymph drainage can all be really helpful for that. When you open up the chute, the toxins can go out and you won't herx as much, you won't have as many symptoms, you'll tolerate detox a lot better. After that, you have to have binders on board so that when you start the heavier detox, the binders are going to be able to help mop up the byproducts of the detox. So that's important to get on board before you do more aggressive detox. And then you're going to be looking at like nutritional based things, frequency based things. There's ion foot cleanse, there's DMSA, EDTA, DMPS. There's so many different ways to detox, sauna, but pick one and practice it regularly. I recommend that people practice a lifestyle of daily detoxification because we're all surrounded by so many toxins and it's contributed to every single chronic illness that exists. So we all need to be doing it. Colonics can be great, all kinds of other things that can really be important. Balancing zinc and copper, replacing minerals, fulvic and humic are great for that, making sure that you're supporting both phase 1, 2, and 3 detox pathways. Phosphatidylcholine is amazing, great binder of mold and metals and toxins. We talked about some of these things already, but glutathione, all of these things are super helpful. You also want to detox from EMFs. So you really need to, again, cut your exposure to Wi-Fi and EMFs, get rid of Alexa, get rid of, Google Home Mini, all of her competitors. These are, every appliance nowadays, our smart TVs, our smart refrigerators, our smart stoves, our smart everything, thermostats. These are all really not good for us. It's exposing us to more Wi-Fi. You can use all of these great inventions and hardwire them if you buy the right version. So really look at doing that, really get rid of Wi-Fi, try to have your kid have a very limited to no screen time daily while you're in the healing phase. I know that's hard to think about, but my kids that see the fastest recovery are able, do that. So that can be a tremendous, tremendous issue. Educate yourself on 5G and petition for it to be studied for health effects in humans before it's expanded, especially into schools and places where kids frequent. I mean, this is untested in humans. It's not safe from the animal studies, and we need to demand human studies before this is rolled out any further. Reversing the cell danger response is the next step. And the cell danger response is really amazing to understand. And Robert Navio discovered this and has written some great papers on it. He has some great YouTube videos on it. I highly encourage you to watch this and understand this phenomenon because it's really critical to getting your really complex chronic patients to heal and children to heal. So the brain and the peripheral tissues go into CDR activation after experiencing something it perceives as dangerous. And the problem really is when that CDR state doesn't turn off and it's stuck on. And basically, the healing's an active process with this that requires positive reinforcement with non-danger, safety, security signals from the brain. And our brains can really, truly heal our bodies. And the cell danger response is important to understand if you're treating or if you have a child with a complex chronic condition, such as autism or PANDAS or mental illness. Activating the vagus nerve is also critical to this process. So the cell danger response is when normal stages of the cell danger response persist abnormally. And when this happens, the healing cycle is blocked and chronic disease results. So it's not just autism and PANDAS that are plagued by the CDR, it's many of our complex chronic diseases. And Robert Navio is brilliant. I have read his studies over and over to really grasp all of the pearls that they contain. And I highly recommend that you check out his work. We've been using sublingual low-dose immunotherapy extensively for years now, and we have had some amazing benefits from LDI, a specific antigen that is aimed at turning off the cell danger response. We call it CDR, and it found it super helpful, including those kids with pandas and autism. So the stages of the cell danger response are how I think of it is the CDR1 is kind of neutralizing, extinguishing the threat, treating mast cell activation and histamine issues, treating infections in biofilm, detoxifying and supporting mitochondria. And then, sorry about that. Helping create immune balance is kind of the next step, in addition to kind of continuing the things on CDR1, supporting those metabolic changes that are related to CDR through all of the functional medicine interventions that I've talked about so far and will continue to review in this lecture. And then finally, CDR3 is kind of optimizing the cell-to-cell communication and optimizing the cell-to-brain communication via the vagus nerve. So vagus nerve stimulation is critical to this improvement. So how do you stimulate your vagus nerve? There are implanted pulse generators that you can surgically have put in for your child. I don't recommend that as a first step, but there is good research on that and is an option. Frequency-specific microcurrent has a great vagal nerve stimulation protocol. Love it, and that is super helpful. You have to do it frequently in the beginning, but so it really only, I'd say it's most effective for people who have their own units. Targeted acupuncture can be great. Singing is great. Getting your kid into choir or theater or something where they can sing, church choir, what have you. Gargling actually stimulates the vagus nerve. There's some physical exercises, that you can do that can stimulate the vagus nerve. And there's lots of ways to do that. So do some research on that and start looking at that for your child and yourself. The next step is really repairing the damage. So when we remove the barriers to self-healing, to self-repair, we will start healing. So the body will trend towards that if we get those barriers out of the way that we've talked about in the presentation so far. So frequency-specific microcurrent helps induce ATP and help repair. We can do retraining the brain, limbic system retraining. Microcurrent neurofeedback is amazing. Neurostim and neurofeedback can help repair the damage, and stem cells are probably the ultimate in repairing damage. We're still in the infancy right now, wild west of stem cells. And I think that it is important to make sure that we are knowledgeable about what we're doing if we're moving into stem cells, and that you have advice from a stem cell well-versed practitioner. There's certain kinds that work really well and in certain circumstances, and others that don't. And so many people that I'm seeing will go out and do these expensive stem cells, and they haven't gotten their gut in good shape. They haven't cleared their heavy metals. They haven't done these other things, gotten out of mold. And unless they do that, they're never going to get the full benefit from that. And much better bang for your buck if you do those other things first and before you consider the stem cells. So now we're going to go into some healing modalities. And I've talked a lot about LDI, but you might be wondering who are good candidates for that. And really anybody with allergies to anything at all, or anyone with autoimmune tendencies or disease are the best candidates. And I definitely see autoimmune and hypersensitivity allergy issues in autism and pandas and mental illness in general, so sensory integration disorder, et cetera. So LDI is typically helpful for all of those conditions. It's really a sublingual drop that goes under your tongue. It's only once every 7 to 8 weeks typically, although sometimes there might be booster doses or titration doses. And the antigens can be foods, hay fever, bacteria, viruses, fungus, almost anything else. It could be autologous samples. And we've absolutely been loving it ever since we brought it on many years ago. Frequency-specific microcurrent, I've talked a ton about already. Craniosacral therapy and MNRI. We have a great craniosacral therapist and a Muscatova neurologic reflex integration therapist in our office. And Basically, the craniosacral really helps with releasing toxins and other materials. It's a really manual, gentle, light approach. Kids really enjoy it. They can calm down from before a session until after just amazingly. It helps them get into parasympathetic. Really looking at optimal nervous system function by improving the improvement of fluid flow within the central nervous system. And kids feel good with this, and they ask to come back. And our therapist is a pro. She's also an occupational therapist. And then MNRI is amazing, musculoskeletal neurologic reflex integration therapy. And I kind of consider both of these as foundations, kind of like I think of diet as a foundation. If your kids can be doing this and doing diet while you're working all the other stuff, they're gonna do much better. So intravenous ozone MAH with ultraviolet light, that's been a tool we've added this year, and I must say I really love it. We're just getting into using it more with pandas and autism, but really hearing good things about that, and it's just such a great option for really reducing a lot of the pathogens, for helping with cell regeneration, metabolic processes. It's really an amazing, it's very safe, very easy to administer treatment. Now the intravenous ozone is not as easy for kids because it's a poke. What I love about it is that we can do the ultraviolet light therapy concurrent, where the blood gets exposed to ultraviolet light A, B, and C. And the exposure to the ultraviolet light C is amazing for COVID. I just got over COVID. I'm pretty certain I'm going to be doing antibody testing to double check, but I had all the tools at my fingertips to treat it, and I did great. So I think that there's a lot of treatment in functional medicine for COVID, and IV ozone with MAH and ultraviolet light, especially the UVC, has been great. And then also IV vitamin C is great. Nebulized treatments for H2O2 or HOCl, glutathione nebs. There's just so many great treatments, zinc, vitamin C, quercetin, and proteolytic enzymes, as long as I'm on a little bit of a COVID tangent. Proteolytic enzymes to make sure the blood doesn't get too hypercoagulable are critical. That was one of the biggest things that I think turned me around, because I was already doing a lot of the prophylactic kind of things before I got sick. So have a little toolkit of things at home. And for anyone interested in kind of knowing what to do, we are offering half off COVID kind of mini visits with our functional medicine practitioners through telemedicine. So if you want to know what to put in that toolkit, call and talk to one of our team members. We also are doing classes too, so zoom into some of our classes and we can give you specific information about coronavirus and kids with immune system vulnerabilities and what you need to do to help them. So back to ozone therapy is super helpful given rectally, and that's very quick and easily tolerated by most kids. It's really not as bad as it sounds. It's literally like 3 minutes and kind of like just doing a rectal temperature is what you want to think of it as. And oftentimes if you present it as that or an IV, the kids will prefer the rectal. So we're doing intravenous nutrients as well, IV vitamin C, Myers nutrients, glutathione, alpha-lipoic acid, phosphatidylcholine, taurine, NAD, and for kids that aren't absorbing through their gut, the intravenous nutrition can really make a big difference in the initial stages of healing. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a great option as well. And we have the option of soft chamber or hard chamber. They both have different benefits. It improves cerebral perfusion, decreases inflammation. It's a great therapy to add. We have the V-light therapy, which is great for photobiomodulation. Ultraviolet light ABC, near infrared, color puncture, which I love. Here's a little slide on color puncture. I don't have time to go deep into it, but it's using light and laser on acupuncture points, and it can just calm kids down in a heartbeat. And our therapist, Jenny, is amazing at it. So check that out. other supportive therapies that you're probably already doing, but the one I want to highlight is the emotional spiritual therapies and modalities that are aimed at getting at the potential known or unknown underlying traumas, PTSD, and sometimes this can be epigenetic. It might not be, you know, your child who had the direct trauma. It might be you or your spouse or grandparent or great grandparent, and epigenetically there's been changes that if you can clear those with someone who specializes in that sort of thing, social, emotional, spiritual kind of therapists and healers, that can really be helpful. So gonna really quickly tell you about fasting. It's amazing for kids with autism, with pandas, with other conditions. I think that I'm gonna skip over a lot of this, but a lot of the benefits of fasting are really the things we need to do in autism and pandas and mental illness. So if you look at this list, they help with autophagy, they help with stem cell production, they help with liver detox, decreasing infections, gut issues, lowers oxidative stress, that, you know, goes on and on. So I don't recommend that all kids fast. I think that kids need to be assessed by a functional medicine practitioner, but kids can fast just like adults can fast. And fasting is super popular right now. It's great for increasing akromansia, which helps degrade biofilms. Fasting increases lactobacilli, bacteroides, and prevotella, which oftentimes are low in our kids and not balanced, or their bad versions of those are high, not the good versions. Fasting increases antioxidant metabolic pathways. It helps with immune gut regulation, and it reduces TNF alpha and IL-6, which are potent inflammatory bad cytokines. So one thing I'd just like to stress is if your child is constantly eating without a break, you're really feeding the garden, but you're not weeding. You're not allowing time for those bad bugs to be starved out, and you got to do that weeding. So I'm not going to go into the more on fasting, except for it's amazing. And this psychiatrist just loves it for the improvements in depression, insomnia, anxiety, creative thinking, natural joy, tranquility, that sort of thing. So I'm going to jump into very quickly a couple case studies. So this is Mohammed. He comes from a super loving home, neurotypical siblings. He regressed at 15 months. After his, he got a bunch of vaccines in one day, and the parents believe that that's what the issue was. He's really in his own world, no speech, no attention, no ability to interact or learn from his surroundings, couldn't follow directions. Interestingly, when he was in Somalia, he did much better than when he was in the United States. Lots of theories on that. But EEG brain mapping, the 19-channel QEEG, typically reimbursed by insurance, looks horrible here for him in the beginning. His thalamus wasn't gating properly. It was allowing too much information into his brain, which presents as sensory overload, leading him to feel overwhelmed. Really classic in autism, contributes to stimming and things like that. After 20 sessions, this is what he looked like. He wasn't able to do the eyes closed. This was just eyes open. But after 5 sessions, he was a lot calmer. But after 20 sessions, a combo of neurofeedback, neurostim, and microcurrent neurofeedback, he was verbalizing more. He started reciting his prayers spontaneously. He could start following. He actually is doing very well with following directions right now. He's had increased eye contact. He's engaging with others, strangers, and people familiar. And his therapists were really wondering what was going on. He was much more interactive with his siblings and parents. So this on the left was before. All that red and excessive connections in blue are not where we want it. And after 20 sessions, he's had an amazing improvement. His family is moving on to 20 more sessions, and I'm sure we'll see even more at that point. So for him, we did some folate receptor antibody testing, which he was positive for. He had some voltage-gated calcium channel issues, which is huge in this population, and makes them much more susceptible to EMF issues. So some things that are helpful are fulvic and humic acid, lithium, really getting rid of the EMF exposure. He had a lot of significant SNPs. Don't have time to go into those right now. We did a ton of standard lab testing, which he was abnormal in, and we treated through functional medicine methods. And after both the combined functional medicine and neurotherapy, his bloating was gone, his BMs were regular, he was sleeping through the night, he's, you know, well rested in the morning, less trouble, you know, to his mother, could walk into the clinic and know right where to go without running off and bolting, which he used to do, smiling at the therapist. She said, you know, he's crazy improved, were her words. Dad said he can now zip up his jacket and get dressed more on his own. He's verbalizing more, understanding multi-step directions, stimming is gone, memory is better, doing great in preschool and church school. You know, other therapists are amazed. So a combined approach is amazing and highly recommended. So 12-year-old Kaylee is the next case. She is a PANDAS kiddo, and basically lots of positive antibody testing for Lyme, some thyroid antibodies, had elevated copper, low zinc, low MSH, high whole blood histamine, elevated tryptase, abnormal thyroid markers. 3 out of 5 on our Cunningham panel were positive. Cunningham panel is an awesome test to look at brain autoantibodies. Had high Coxsackie and herpes viruses, normal IgG and subclasses, which oftentimes we don't see, but normal vitamin D, had ASO and DNase-B strep normal. So this was a Lyme triggered PANS kiddo. So she's got some Lyme positive findings here. They don't always have to be CDC positive to be causing a problem. She had IgM antibodies. She had some thyroid issues, some viral issues here. And here's her QEEG before and after. We love using this tool to monitor improvement in our patients and find it quite helpful. So before eyes open and before eyes closed, lots of red and a lot of coherence issues. And after 5 sessions, eyes open and eyes closed, you can see a remarkable difference. And just to compare before treatment and after treatment, eyes closed, you know, on the left, she was not looking so good, really hot brain. And after 5 sessions, she's doing much better. Still a little bit showing up here and there that we're working on, but she's continuing on with her treatments. But this girl had a huge improvement in her OCD and anxiety. So after the first treatment, the technician noted that a wave of relief swept over her face. She reported she felt less worried, had less OCD when she got home that night. And her anxiety and OCD, including OCD, which is super hard to treat. So I was thrilled at this outcome, went from an 8 out of 10 before the treatment to a 2 out of 10 after just one treatment. Now, this usually it takes longer than one, but this particular patient was very quick to respond. Due to COVID-19, there was a delay in her sessions and her anxiety and OCD crept back up, but only to a 4 out of 10. And so amazingly didn't budge up higher, but she was really anxious to get back. So as soon as we had enough personal protective gear and got her sanitation and practices and distancing in place, she was able to come back and had 5 sessions, and parents have reported incredible improvement. The next case is Arjun. He's a little guy with autism that came in after trying lots of things. He had done the gluten-free, dairy-free. He did gut treatments, antifungals, MB12, leucovorin, methylation support, mitochondrial treatments. He had done a course of hyperbarics, many months of detox protocols, lots of supplements given by another very skilled provider here in the United States, and came to Newbridge. We oftentimes see people that have seen lots of other people before us, and all of us have a job to help that individual. And we tweaked a few things with his diet. We did do a little bit more therapeutic diet for him, and overall gut healing regimen. And then we strategically added an LDI. So we for him did foods, inhalants, or environmental, chemicals, molds, yeast, parasites, Clostridia, Lyme, herpes virus, viruses, CDR, and MMR. And this wasn't done all at once. This was done over time. A couple of them we dropped because we didn't feel they were critical, but he noticed especially significant improvement after the food doses, the Lyme doses, and the CDR doses once we got up to therapeutic dosing. So we did some dose titration with him so that we could work up more quickly, and also some booster dosing, which really helped. Dad reported that adding LDI after further diet changes and gut healing, so that combination provided the single biggest improvement they had seen throughout his therapy thus far. And they had done lots of more sophisticated things. So that can be a great thing. So, and I think we're going to move on to just a quick description of our combined one-on-one and group visits for PANDAS, autism, Lyme, and mold. At Newbridge, we really focus on making this care affordable and accessible. That's in our mission statement. And therefore, we wanted to create group visits and online visits so that people from anywhere in the world could talk with us, ask their questions, get them answered, get care, functional medicine care. We do it as a group. So we have classes and question and answer groups that are more like support and Q&A and lectures. But then we have actual functional medicine clinical visits as if you were getting a one-on-one visit, but we just do it as a group. So So our package includes 12 months of functional medicine basics classes, kind of helping people with the basics. People get a 19-channel QEEG before and after. We do an assessment of all of their stressors like food intolerances, allergies, viruses, bacteria, yeast, parasites, metals, chemicals, mold, EMF, stress, etc. There's group nutrition consults, there's group support groups, there's some one-on-one visits interspersed, some targeted nutritional instruction. We have LDI startup assessments, instructions, and follow-up that people can learn about. And then really importantly, care for the caregiver. You parents have to really do your own self-care or you're not gonna be able to be as readily available to help your child heal. So group coaching, infrared sauna, ozone sauna, ionic foot baths, and lots of other things. Some of the extra more designer treatments like ozone and IV and neurotherapy were offered at a discount. And these are all the therapies that we offer. We found that our group patients, our cohorts, really do better. Our outcomes are much better than the one-on-one patients, at least the one-on-one patients that are typical. So most people can't afford to come in all the time if their insurance doesn't, cover things, and they need to basically get this care in a group setting in order to be able to afford it. And that gives them lots of extra treatments. So we have classes too. You can use the code Autism1 2020 on our website when you try to sign up for a class. This is through May 31st. I'm going to actually ask our IT guys to expand that to through June, just because it will give you more time to get a more idea of some of the things that might be helpful. So I just want to thank everyone so much. We are going to be moving into questions soon, but before that, I just want to introduce you to all of our wonderful staff. And just know that, a combined functional medicine approach with this multidisciplinary approach can really help kids to be healthy and happy. And that's what most parents want. So thank you. And now we're going to open it up to questions.